A lost mountain climber in Pakistan finds a need to meet and ultimately becomes a leading warrior of peace in the war on terror. And now that should be a movie. Hello, and thank you for watching today's episode of That Should Be a Movie. I'm C.W. Johnson Jr. Today's book I'd like to pitch as a movie is 3 Cups of Tea. One man's mission to fight terrorism and build nations, one school at a time, by Greg Mortenson and David Oliver Relin from Viking Press. The story begins in September 1993, when Greg Mortenson has become lost in the beauty of the Karakoram Mountains of Pakistan. He had planned to summit K2, one of the world's most difficult climbs and second tallest peak, but failed after a member of the climbing party became ill. Facing failure for the first time in his life was doubly humiliating for Greg, since he had planned to honor his deceased sister by placing her necklace on the summit. Lost in the mountains, he stumbled into the village of Corfe. In Corfe, he was greeted by the village elder, Haji Ali. Greg was very impressed with the hospitality of the villagers, who gave him tea and their best yak blankets. He noticed many other things about Corfe. Being an EMT, he noticed every household had someone suffering from goiters or cataracts. Many of the children who trailed him around the village suffered from malnutrition. He used his EMT skills to treat these conditions, earning him the nickname Dr. Greg. One thing he also noticed about the children was they had no school building. Instead, they studied in the open air, kneeling in rocks and snow as they were assailed by cold winds. Greg found out that Corfe was so physically and culturally isolated from the government in Islamabad that promised funds often did not arrive. After meeting some of the immediate physical needs of the villagers, Greg promises Haji Ali that he will return and build a school. Back in America, Greg is at a loss on how to keep this promise. After the difficulty of writing 500 letters by hand on a typewriter, he receives only 1 check. He doesn't even have a physical address or name for his project. The most help he gets is from a laser imaging owner, Kiswar Saeed, who is a Pakistani whose village once didn't have a school either. Saeed gave Greg a series of free lessons until his friend was computer literate. Greg's mother was a school teacher, and her students help him raise funds. He finally gets support from Dr. Gene Herney, a blunt physicist who had built a half-dozen companies. Herney was also a mountain climber who had visited the Karakoram area. He gives Greg the $12,000 needed to build the Corfe school and tells him, "Don't screw up." Eventually, Greg decides he will bring schools to all the villages in the neglected regions of northern Pakistan. This occurred after a frustrating experience in which he could not get his supplies from his local guide, Chan Ganji. Instead of taking Greg to the village he promised to build a school for, Corfe, Chan Ganji took him to his village, Kordu. During dinner with the elders, Chan Ganji tried to convince Greg to build the school for Kordu instead. Enraged, Greg violated custom by leaving the meal and storming out of the village, where he threw himself on the ground and started crying. He soon found himself surrounded by children. Coming to his senses, he introduced himself to the children by saying, "I am Greg. I am good. What is your name?" By the time Chan Ganji found him, he was teaching the children multiplication by using a branch to draw in the dirt. As Greg drove away from the village, he decided he would treat all the people in the Baltistan region equally, and the schools would not be to enrich village headmen. To do this, he would create the Central Asia Institute, the CAI, which would use local materials and labor. Greg's plan was inspired by his father, Irving Dempsey Mortenson. Mr. Mortenson had been a medical missionary and teacher in Tanzania, where Greg grew up and fell in love with mountaineering after climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. The elder Mortenson turned heads when he insisted on turning a hospital over to local villagers instead of the children of expatriates and government elites. He believed that instead of telling local people, "Look what we've done for you," he should say, "Look what you've done for yourselves and how much more you can do." Greg tried to follow his father's example, respecting local customs and traditions, sometimes learning the hard way, like the time he was kidnapped and held hostage for several days by locals suspicious of outsiders who hadn't properly established a relationship. He made many sacrifices back in America. He often worked the night shift in some of the most undesirable hospital wards, such as trauma and burn units. He lived frugally, often sleeping out of his car. Along the way, he lost jobs and a girlfriend. At one point, he was mugged by two youth who were disappointed to find all he had on him were $2. Still, Greg did not give up his promise to the people of Corfe. There were many obstacles Greg had to overcome to build the schools. The roads were primitive, often on the edge of sheer cliffs, and could easily be stopped by boulders, avalanches, and rock and mudslides. Bridges could be washed out. At one point, he was even stopped by guerrillas, demanding that the Pakistani government turn over a government contractor so they could hang him for embezzling funds meant for the area's infrastructure. Even after bringing all the supplies that had not been stolen all the way up to Corfe, Greg had to wait until he had raised funds and collected materials to build a bridge across the Broadu River. Not only does this bridge ensure that the school is built, but it empowers the Balti women, allowing them to travel freely. One of the biggest challenges to overcome was the opposition of Islamic fundamentalists to education for girls. There was Haji Madedi, a Numidar, who runs his village like a mafia boss. He accuses Greg of poisoning the children with Western teachings and demands that Haji Ali pay him 12 of the village's best rams, a price Haji Ali willingly pays in order to ensure the children's education. Another local seer declares a fatwa, a religious ruling, against Greg because of the education of girls. In northern Pakistan, the local mullahs and Shariat law had just as much authority as the Pakistani government. A red velvet box arrives containing the ruling of the highest mufti in Iran, overturning the fatwa, but still Greg faces opposition from local mullahs. At one point, thugs attacked a co-ed school, trying to set it on fire, then swinging sledgehammers to knock down the brick walls. Another mullah destroyed bricks meant for a school. A Shariat court declared the mullah's fatwa illegitimate and ordered him to pay CAI $800 to cover the damages. A Pakistani military commander also buzzes the mullah's house with a helicopter to give him something to think about. Greg also faced opposition from his fellow Americans. After the terrorist attacks of 9/11, he began receiving hate mail, calling him a traitor and wishing him a painful death. Receiving hate he would have expected from ignorant village mullahs made him want to give up. Yet other Americans still supported Greg, believing that if the CAI was not working in that area of Pakistan, people would be shouting, "We hate America," While Greg supported the war in Afghanistan, he had been concerned with the flight of refugees from the Taliban for years. He was openly critical of many of the ways the military was not respecting the culture and traditions of the locals, especially when it came to calling civilian deaths collateral damage. He even refuses a $1 million donation from the US government for fear it would endanger his reputation. Instead, he received support from private Americans who believe that Greg's work is just another front on the war on terror. This is because of madrasas, Islamic religious schools in the region. Many of the madrasas and mosques being built in Pakistan were supported by the seemingly unlimited funds of the Wahhabi sect out of Saudi Arabia. They would teach an ultra-conservative, ultra-fundamentalist Islamic curriculum that brainwashed young boys. Terry Richard wrote that rural Pakistan was a breeding ground for terrorists, where illiterate young boys often end up in terrorist camps. By increasing literacy, tensions can be reduced. The 9/11 Commission made a connection between the Taliban and one of the Saudi groups supporting the madrasas. One madrasa earned the nickname University of Jihad. While not all madrasas are hotbeds of extremism, there are thousands in Pakistan filling in the void left by the country's dysfunctional educational system. Because of the Khyber Pass, many of the madrasa's graduates have easy access to Afghanistan. The key to defeating terrorism is education. Fellow mountaineer Charlie Szymanski believes that Greg will one day win the Nobel Peace Prize for battling with the real causes of terrorism in a way that is every bit as heroic as the firemen rushing into the Twin Towers. Greg's pioneering fight against poverty and illiteracy makes him a real American hero. In this fight, Greg is surrounded by a host of fascinating characters. Haji Ali, the wise village elder, who taught Greg to slow down and respect the way of the Balti. The first time you share tea with a Balti, you are a stranger. The second time, you are an honored guest. The third time you share a cup of tea, you become family. And for our family, we are prepared to do anything, even die, he told him, encouraging Greg to let the people of Corfe build the school at their own pace. The conservative mullah, Sher Taki, who helped carry building supplies despite having a limp, the ornery Dr. Gene Herney, who demanded to see a picture of the Corfe school before he died of cancer, Greg's eventual wife, Terrorism, who builds a community center for the women of Corfe, Mary Bono, the young Republican representative of Palm Springs, California, who Greg met by accident at the exclusive Yellowstone Club, Abdul Saul, who teaches Greg how to shop for construction supplies, Johan, the headstrong girl who became the first educated woman in the Baldru Valley, and a host of religious and civil leaders and private Pakistanis and Afghans who support the education of the boys and girls of Central Asia. As of the state, over 60 schools have been built in the remotest parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. A movie based on 3 Cups of Tea would be inspiring, heartwarming, motivating, and thought-provoking. It would help create peace and understanding between the people of America and Central Asia. The book is written in an intimate way, focusing on small sights and sounds, which create a picture that puts you right in the events. As such, I could see Terry George, Mark Foster, Ron Howard, Angelina Jolie, Emile Estevez, Werner Herzog, Rowan Javier, or Peter Weir directing. Since Greg's story is a spiritual journey, perhaps a mini-series on a streaming service like Netflix or Amazon could best capture the pace and atmosphere necessary in its telling. Because it is a heartwarming and inspiring story of one man's peaceful fight for freedom in a world of war, I believe that 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortenson and David Oliver Relin should it be a movie or miniseries? Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and share with all your friends. Then let me know in the comment section what book that's inspiring to you think should be a movie.